gotta admit, I was quite apprehensive stepping onto the racetrack with this motorcycle, because if you remember, last year we reviewed the previous generation Street Fighter. That was quite a wild beast. It required every little drop, every little ounce of talent that I had to hold on to it, hold on to dear life, and pray to every god that I know so it doesn't spit me off, because it was such a brutal machine, so much power, so much torque. And then when I picked up the spec sheet and realized that they made this Street Fighter the craziest Street Fighter they've ever made, in terms of this is essentially a stripped down Panigale V4S, makes pretty much the same horsepower as the latest generation Panigale. That really scared me, because I'm like, holy shit, if the last one was so hard to control, I cannot even imagine adding another 7 or 8 horsepower to the same bike, how that's gonna help. But what gave me a little bit of solace was the fact that I was again here about 3 months ago on the new Panigale V4S, and I went faster than I ever had. And that was down to all the changes that they've made in terms of the electronics, the dual-sided swing arm, in terms of the new electronic settings from Öhlins, which made the bike not only a lot less physically demanding to ride, but also inspired a whole lot of confidence. So that is what gave me hope. And we came here, we have been riding here for the last 2 days on this bike, and the experience has been kind of a mixed bag. By the end of the very first session, I was already convinced that this is essentially the best braking system that I've experienced on a naked. Because the Brembo Hypure calipers, the twin 330mm discs, and the new electronics package in terms of the combined braking system that Ducati have incorporated, which means that even when you're trail braking into a corner and you let go of the front, the rear still stays engaged to tighten the line. And that meant that no matter how hard I braked, no matter how later I braked, I still felt that I was over braking given the potency of the brakes. And that showed me, like, you can carry so much more speed into a corner, you can brake that much later and still feel confident that 100% not only will it stop in time, but also give you that much more precision. Even after 2 days, after about 18 sessions of riding, the braking was super consistent. So yeah, in terms of feel, in terms of feedback, and in terms of just the outright stopping power that you have at your disposal, this is arguably the best systems I've experienced on a naked. Another vital factor which I feel plays a crucial role in making the braking as good as it is also down to the updated wings. These are now incorporated already in the design of the motorcycle, and more importantly, they now provide almost 17 kg more downforce at 240 kilometers an hour. I clearly did not go as fast on this racetrack, but I could feel the difference they made in terms of the stability that you feel when you're really braking into a corner and tipping the motorcycle in. Next thing which makes this motorcycle a lot less physically demanding to ride is also the changes that Ducati have made in terms of the ergonomics, mainly the handlebar, which now sits about 10 mm closer because of the way it's slanted. So it sits a lot closer to the rider, which gives you more of a slightly more upright riding position while still giving the same kind of leverage, which makes it very easy to ride. So I remember distinctly when I was here last year reviewing the last generation of this motorcycle, I was absolutely destroyed by the end of the first day. But on this bike, in terms of the physical effort required, it was definitely a lot less compared to the previous generation, and that's down to the changes Ducati have made to the ergonomics. But here's the thing, I was expecting more. I was expecting this bike right here to be even easier to ride. And I know that sounds ludicrous, but that expectation came from just how much easier the latest generation Panigale was, what this motorcycle is based on. That motorcycle, with all the changes that Ducati made in terms of the swing arm, in terms of the electronics, in terms of the Ducati Vehicle Observer, which works with just one aim in mind, is to give you the best possible drive, to minimize wheelies and to minimize slide. I was kind of expecting the same with this motorcycle, but still, this proved to be quite a handful and a lot more demanding to ride. And that primarily is down to the fact that This one is running a much shorter final drive compared to the Panigale. I think this one runs a 1542 teeth final drive compared to a 1641 on the Panigale. And not to mention, this one also gets the variable valve timing for the first time ever. So initially the torque comes in nice and easy, but then as soon as the main torque kicks in, the bike is weaving like crazy. The handlebar is constantly shaking. I think if this bike did not have a steering damper, you would have like possibly the worst tank slappers of your life. And that's just down to just the amount of torque this one packs, which makes it very, very hard to control, even though this has a longer wheelbase than the Panigale V4S. Especially on a track like MMRT, quite bumpy, and that's why even in terms of suspension setup, you kind of have to strike a balance, because you want the motorcycle to still glide over the bumps and still put the power down in a nice predictable way. But I think also because of the fact that this one is running slightly more progressive linkages at the back compared to the Panigale, the weight transfer is not as smooth, and could also be down to the fact that this one is running Rosso 4 Corsa and not Super Corsas as on the Panigale. Maybe that played a difference, but yeah, there was a lot of movement every single time I would accelerate, to the point where I could not even keep the throttle pinned because just how much the handlebar was shaking. Now, one of the main reasons why Ducati have gone this far with the new Street Fighter, making it as close to the Panigale, is because they envision this bike to be a roadster, but which is almost just as capable as their super bike when you bring it to the racetrack. I think that they have gone a little too far in that aspect, because even though this machine has all the electronics, all the updates, is essentially a stripped down Panigale, it's still not at the same level when you bring it to a racetrack in terms of the front end feel, in terms of how confident you feel entering the corners, because of obviously the change ergonomics. You're sitting a little more upright, the foot pegs are maybe a little more front set and lower down. Foot pegs were never really an issue when I was riding the Panigale, but here I constantly felt like I was grazing them quite a bit. And also the geometry, the forks are a little more raked out, so you don't have the same level of front end feel. So when you're entering the corners, it does feel good, feel really good for a naked, but compared to the Panigale, you don't have the same level of feedback, the same level of comfort, the confidence to really trail brake really hard into a corner as I could on the Panigale. So in terms of lap timings, we were still about 4 to 5 seconds off the Panigale on the same exact track. And then there are the other bits. Considering that this is still a roadster, it still doesn't get a fuel gauge, it doesn't get a range indicator, you still don't get heated grips, and even the other stuff like cruise control, turn-by-turn navigation, even the rear seat for that matter, is something that you have to buy as an accessory, which undoubtedly is quite a pinch, considering that now this one, the V4S variant of the Street Fighter, will put you back by 32.38 lakhs ex-showroom. But more than that, I, as a journalist, really feel that maybe Ducati have gone a little too far with this Street Fighter, because even on a racetrack, I think this is too much of a motorcycle. I think there are very few people in all of India who have the talent to really get anywhere close to exploiting even 70% of its potential, just because how much it moves, even though Ducati have laced it with all the electronics that have worked so beautifully on the Panigale. I mean, the last one was already a brute, and I think maybe that level of power, 205 horses, even though on a naked is ludicrous, but then this level of electronics on that could have possibly made it even better as a roadster, and have a fine balance between a roadster, a bike which you can also bring to the racetrack. 214 horses on a naked on the road just absolutely sounds ridiculous. No one needs that kind of power, right? Which then begs the question, then who exactly is this motorcycle designed for? And the only audience that I can think of is a very niche one, which can firstly afford it, and secondly who are proper Ducatistas, who maybe have owned quite a few Ducati superbikes in the past and now want a Ducati superbike, but without having like really aggressive ergonomics like on a Panigale, want something a little more comfortable, but still a proper hardcore Ducati race bike in between their legs. A beautiful machine, a technological marvel, but in my humble opinion, this time around, I think Ducati may have gone a little bit too far with the new Street Fighter V4S.